know the supernatural is something that isn't supposed to happen, but it does happen.
AM 1420, WBSM presents Spooky Southcoast with your hosts, Tim Weisberg and Matt Costa.
Good evening and welcome to Spooky Southcoast. Tim Weisberg here, along with science advisor Matt Moniz. The silent assassin is not with us tonight. I don't know what's going on. He just sent me a message saying he didn't think he was going to be joining us tonight on the air, but that's okay. We say hello to him wherever he is.
Yeah, he's got some stuff to do.
Well, we are going to have a little bit different show here than we normally have. Normally on Spooky Southcoast, we talk about the paranormal each and every Saturday night. And tonight we're going to talk about, I didn't want to do this, I'll be honest with you. I really didn't want to do this. I figured we're a paranormal show, and this is kind of out of the realm of what we deal with. And that was why I haven't blogged all week long on WBSM.com, because I just felt like with all that was going on here in the Boston area, and pretty much across the country, the eyes of the country were on us all week, and I felt like it wasn't really the time to talk about ghosts, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
It just seemed like, it was a little bit too serious of a time to talk about something that a lot of people think of as a frivolous topic. And I know that everybody that's out there that's a fan of this show and is an avid listener of this show, you feel like the paranormal is a legitimate pursuit, and I agree. But I just felt like, for taste reasons and for reasons of just my own comfortability, I didn't want to be spending the week talking about ghosts. And I know a lot of people wanted us to come on the air tonight and talk about the same things that we always talk about each week, and to have it be a little bit of a change of pace from what you've had to listen to on the radio all week long. And that's kind of the way that I wanted to go too. But I started getting messages from our friends and our listeners and our fans and people that we've come to know over the years from across the country and across the world wanting us to address this, because they know us as being the quote-unquote Boston area, paranormal show. And I felt like we had to share with them what it meant for us over the course of this past week, because it really did strike close to home for both of us, especially considering, we're 40 miles out of Boston. I mean, you work in Boston, of course.
I technically work in Cambridge, yeah.
Yeah, true, yeah, Cambridge. But still, you're there every day. I'm there all the time for my job.
Yep.
But we do live outside of Boston. So throughout the course of the week, I thought to myself, this isn't us. This is far enough away from us that I feel like we don't have to address it. And then everything changed. Everything changed yesterday morning, because when the news came out, all of a sudden it struck a lot closer to home. And I started having some realizations that this goes beyond just something that we can tuck away in the corner and ignore and say, that's not us. We're not the news show. That's not what we handle. This has to be addressed. And so, reluctantly, I go into tonight saying, we will share our thoughts and feelings on the course of the week. And we don't have to spend the entire show on it, but we will talk about it, and we do want to hear your thoughts, especially people who are around the country who were sending me messages, are you guys okay? Not realizing that, we were not immediately in the blast area. We weren't, in Watertown. We weren't anywhere near the action that was going down when it was. But they still feel like we're the Boston show. And I don't know, I guess we are.
Yeah, we're probably the largest in our topic in the area. Yeah, I would agree. I would definitely agree. And
I just adjusted the wrong camera.
Okay.
So if you're watching on Spooky TV at SpookySouthcoast.com, I just adjusted the wrong camera. But I don't know. Chris Balzano is going to join us tonight, and he's going to share his own thoughts that he has on this. And I noticed too that we've lost the wide shot cam.
Yeah.
But we'll make do, and we'll just keep going back and forth. Don't be afraid to put your close-up shot on either, Matt. I know that you don't like to do that, but I like to have the camera out on me from time to time. But Chris will join us, and he'll share his thoughts with us. And I don't know. It's just... I want to hear from people. I do. I want to hear what they think, and I want them to be able to kind of get some feeling of catharsis from talking about it here on the show. But at the same time, I'm going into this very reluctantly. I'll say that again because it's not that I don't think that we can't do hard news if we have to. I just don't think that it's our place. And I'm towing the line here and wondering how many people that are listening to the show right now want to hear about anything other than this. And maybe that's our job too.
But some people thinking that I've chewed on this bone all week and I want to flavor something different. This is why we're tuning in. Are you saying that there are some people looking to basically escape, what has happened and delve into the unknown and, a little bit of brain candy for a while, so to speak?
Yeah, and I think, even, sports is supposed to do part of that, but sports has been so infiltrated with this story this week, and just an amazing, amazing ceremony today from the Red Sox. I don't know if you got a chance to see any of it, but
No.
I'm going to try and pull up the David Ortiz audio a little bit later on, because I guess the FCC is giving us all a pass, from what I read on Twitter. So I'll save that since you haven't heard it.
With our luck.
Yeah, but I don't know. If we get in trouble, it's worth it for this. So maybe we'll play that a little bit later on. And who knows? Maybe I'll hit the dump button at the right time if I feel like I have to. But like I said, when the news started coming out yesterday, when they had the pursuit of the suspects Thursday night into Friday morning, and the story started coming out about the identities of who these terrorists, and that's what they were, when those stories started coming out, it became to me, I'm not exactly a news junkie, but when something like this goes on, I have to stay tuned because I have to pay attention to all the developments. And in doing so, I found a whole new avenue for getting my fix for the news as it happens. I've kind of abandoned the network news on television. On radio is a little bit different. I find that on radio, the updates are coming a lot more constantly than on television. But I turned to Twitter, and I'd never really done that before. I've paid attention to Twitter during games, during sporting events, the Super Bowl, things like that. That's usually what I use Twitter for entertainment purposes, not really to get my news, because so many, first of all, the people that I follow on Twitter, they're like me. They're not exactly tweeting hardcore news. They're sharing opinions and thoughts about things, and it's about sports or the paranormal or what have you. But it became fascinating to me how much news was hitting Twitter first and taking a significant amount of time to get on the air of the radio station. So I understand it's because they're fact-checking. But when a tweet is coming out from the Boston Globe, then why can't a network news station say, the Boston Globe is reporting, the Boston Globe tweeted? It's almost like there's like a bias against it because they're not the ones to have it. That's the thing. Everybody wanted to be first, and it blew up in their faces. I'm sorry. I'll take that back. But everybody tried to be the first ones to the story, and what ended up happening is not only were they getting scooped, but at the same time they were stuck in a very uncomfortable period of nothing but conjecture. And if there's anybody who comes out of this imprinted in the public brain from the news coverage over the last week, it's Jack Williams of Channel 4. Because did you pay attention to Channel 4 at all?
I jumped around from channel to channel.
All right. Jack, we all know, for those who aren't familiar with the area, Jack's old. Okay, he's been around forever.
Since the 70s.
And I guess at some point he decided he just wasn't going to hold back anymore. And that's what that's really what he did. He just spoke his mind. But part of that was because you had these, first of all, they were on 24 hours a day throughout the week, and it seems like poor Jack never got out of the Channel 4 newsroom. But, you've just got all this stuff coming out, and just random filler. People just making up the story as they went along, and I think that's part of the problem with the news media.
In some cases, when they were running around Watertown, some of the news people wound up being part of the story when they got caught in that crossfire and stuff like that.
And there's a general rule of thumb here in the media, and I'll say, Chris, I see Chris is in the chat room, so Chris, you know the VIP line number, just call in whenever you want. But there's kind of I don't even know, it might even be a written rule, so I don't want to say an unwritten rule, but in the media, you don't put yourself in the story. You're supposed to be reporting on the news. You're not supposed to be part of the news. And I don't blame the reporters, because the reporters are kind of giving their own eyewitness account, but it was amazing to me, especially CNN, how much they insisted on putting themselves into the story. How much it had to be, CNN first on the scene, CNN only ones to get this close to the suspect when they're taking him into custody. And it kind of sickened me, the turn that it took, because it literally became like an episode of The Newsroom on HBO, where it's about having it for, and even in The Newsroom, it's idealized a bit, so they do, check their facts and get sources behind them, but I just felt like a lot of the news stations out there didn't do themselves any favors with their coverage of this, but that's completely beside the point. What did strike me as interesting was, as these rumors were popping up online on Friday morning, I'm sitting there at my day job, which I have, zero internet signal on my phone, but I'm sitting there like trying to get Twitter to update, trying to get Facebook to update, trying to find out whatever information I can before the radio is reporting it. And the story comes out that Johar was a UMass Dartmouth student. And I don't know if this was ever confirmed, but one of the reports that I heard was that as they were trying to decide when he was on campus, of course we found out that he was on campus the next day and that he was there throughout the week. But one of the stories that was out there that proved that he had been on campus was that his student ID had been swiped going into the athletic center on Tuesday evening to go into the gym and work out. Tuesday evening, I was at the UMass Dartmouth pool in the athletic center with my 8-year-old son for his swim lesson. So I was 100 yards from this son of a bitch while he was there. And when I heard that, it was like any walls I had tried to put up between myself and the story kind of all came crashing down. It was similar to what kind of the first crack in that wall came when I texted you at 5:30 in the morning on Friday.
Yeah.
When I told you, these bastards were right across the street from where you work.
Yes. The cop that was shot was right down the street from where I work, yes.
And so any kind of insulation I tried to put into it, it just fell down. And again, as I said, I never did have confirmation about what the time frame was for when he was on campus, but just knowing that he was there, that he was 20 miles from our house, and I say our house, but I mean our individual houses, we don't live together. I don't want to start any rumors. But even now, like, think about it. He could have been somebody who listens to the show. For all we know, there could have been a bunch of people in the dorms on Saturday night that turn us on and laugh at us because, they're like, listen to these crazy nuts. I mean, it could be a drinking game. I wouldn't be surprised.
And if there is one involved, I would like to sit in.
Yeah, exactly. Let us know so that we can join in on the fun. But it just it just got too close. And then, of course, last night, I'm sitting there, and I'm not going to lie to you here.
Watching some of the streets they were going up and down, knowing we've been up and down them doing events up there.
Well, not only that, but I'm thinking to myself, like, all right, I'm supposed to be writing a Celtics column for today's Standard Times, and I decided to have the TV on as I was writing. And as they got closer to apprehending him, I just became so engrossed in that the story kind of fell by the wayside. And I started getting emails from the editors saying, we're waiting for you for the cover. Okay, sorry. So I had to kind of refocus in and get that done. But I had the TV on. I had Twitter open. I had Facebook open. I had my cell phone right next to me. And then I discovered the fact that you can listen to the Boston Police scanner over the internet, and so I had that on as well. And I became so engrossed in it that that's all I did for the rest of the night. And again, as I said, I'm not somebody who's a news junkie. I just like to pay attention when something's going down, and to sit there and follow along with it minute by minute. It blew my mind. And it blew my mind that we can live in that kind of world now, that we had friends of ours, listeners to the program from across the country, who were asking for updates of what was going on because they weren't getting the most frequent updates. So they were asking me what was going on, what's going on your local news, and I was able to direct them to that broadcast of the Boston Police Radio. And some people, didn't really do what they were supposed to do. I don't know if you're familiar with what was going on in Moniz, but the law enforcement officials were asking for people not to post up the information of what was going on, and
yes,
and a lot of people were. So I was very conscious of the fact that I'm in the media and I need to obey that rule. So I couldn't really be posting up what was going on, so I was just kind of letting people know where they could go and find out anyway. So it just, as much as I tried to insulate myself from the story and try to say, it happened close to home, but not close enough to home for me to be that concerned, I can't say that anymore. They're taking suspects, people into custody for questioning here in Bedford, and there was a rumor that he might have been here, and that's why they were sending the SWAT teams down into that neighborhood. That's immediately what starts getting reported. People start saying, I just saw him on the street, an hour ago. And rumor turns into news, but it was fascinating to me to follow along with this whole thing, and I feel almost like we own the story more than we ever could have before all this stuff existed.
I agree. I mean, I had my own personal dealings with the aftermath of the explosion, because when I went in on Monday, it was Patriots Day, and a lot of Boston was already closed down. I got into Charlestown because my brother-in-law works there, and we basically just flew right into Boston very early, and expecting traffic, and there really was none. So I hopped on the train, went into work, and on my way home, because I got out early, I was on the subway just moments after the explosions went off, and where I am on the Red Line, up in basically Kendall Square. By the time I get down to Park and Downtown Crossing, they already had those stations closed, and everybody was being dumped into South Station. And my train arrives to a platform full of people, all crying and screaming, and a number of people covered in blood. And that's basically how I found out how this all happened, merely moments ago.
And I had tickets to go to see Fleetwood Mac Thursday night in Boston, and work commitments came up, so I was unable to go. So my wife and I decided that we were going to sell the tickets, and we sold them to somebody who is a friend of ours that we knew would enjoy the show. And I met up with him on Sunday to let him have the tickets, and he told me that he was going to the Red Sox game. He was taking his 8-year-old son, or it might be 7, but he was taking his young son to his very first Red Sox game on Marathon Monday. And he's asking me, where can I park up there? And I said, you're not going to be able to park anywhere near there because, it's going to just be ridiculous. And so Yeah, it does that. It comes back on from time to time. So I told him, I said, you know, you're better off trying to take public transportation. And I don't know what he did, but I know that he was talking to me about going to the game and then maybe going over to the finish line to see whoever was coming through at the time after the game was over. And I was telling him about Rick and Dick Hoyt and that they might be coming through. And I was telling him about all the different, you know, charity runners that usually finish up around the time that the game is over, and people that they could go cheer on. Because I've had the pleasure of interviewing Dick Hoyt a few times, and it's just an amazing story. And so I told him, you know, that's who you want to go see. And so I was very concerned that they were there. And so I immediately texted him. I didn't hear back. And I was like, oh, I just hope that nothing happened. But, you know, thankfully his wife posted up on Facebook a little while later that they were okay. And actually what had happened was his son got tired and they decided that they didn't want to stay, so they went home early. So, you know, I'm sure as a dad trying to bring his son to his first game, he was probably upset when his kid wanted to go home early and say, come on, I paid, you know, all this money for these tickets and you want to go? But looking back, it's probably the best thing that they could have done. And then, of course, yesterday morning, you were, I don't know if you were already on your way to work or getting ready to leave, but...
Just about to hop on the highway, yeah.
And I assume that, you know, you ended up not having to go in.
Yeah, my work basically was parts where were closed down. The whole area was closed down, obviously, through this investigation and stuff like that. So my work sent out a emergency email to everybody saying, stay home, stay out of the city, just come back on Monday. So.
And I guess there's it's just amazing to me that people obeyed those orders as much as they did. You know, I just assumed there would be somebody who would, you know, rail against having to be basically in lockdown and decry, you know, how their freedom is being taken away and they should be able to go out on the street if they want to. But, you know, thankfully nobody did that. Everybody cooperated, and it worked out for the best. All right, well, let's bring in Chris Balzano because we have him sitting there on the line. And let me turn on this too. Hello, Chris. Are you with us?
Hey, Tim. How are you? Matt, what's going on?
Same old, brother.
It's been a while since we've spoken to you. How have you been?
I've been good. I've just been living large down here in Florida until this week, you know?
Right, and I'm sure that you're not the only Boston area transplant down there either.
No, it extends because, especially on Monday, the marathon being a global event and definitely a New England event, there were enough people that were from Rhode Island, that are from Connecticut, who, you know, that's the first thing we said when we saw each other on Tuesday. Hey, all your people, are they okay? And so, you know, there were a lot of people who were needing someone to talk to, needing someone to vent about and someone to process with here because they knew people. You know, this is, I work right next to Fenway South. I mean, this is little New England here in Fort Myers, Florida. It's definitely a part of an extension of what's going on there in New England. And so, you know, it was comforting to be able to find people to talk to because, you know, it's very odd that this was not the topic of conversation at the water cooler, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
There were not a lot of people who were not in New England talking about this. I was kind of baffled by that. And granted, it was an odd week where I was. We had, you know, our standardized testing, which unfortunately interfered with a lot of my being able to follow up on things, especially on Friday, when all I wanted was information.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, we were able to find comfort with each other, which is why I think that, you know, it's good that you're doing this show. I know that you were debating doing it and debating spooky Southcoast place on this landscape. And one of the things that I posted in the chat room was, you know, this is a community itself, and this is a community that relies on each other to talk about things. I think there are people who write things down physically or mentally to bring up. There's news that happens, and they want to know what Spooky Southcoast thinks about it. And if it's something, you know, like a bill passing legislation or something like that, that's not really something that touches our universal soul.
Right.
This
But I think-
pertains to, our hauntings or UFOs or something.
Right. Oh, I want to know, what do you think about this news clip that came across about this, Bigfoot hoax or something like that? But I think that this story was big enough and touched us enough that people need Spooky South Coast to talk about it, because that's an extension of who they are. And we're constantly reminded about that, how much this show does touch people. And so I think it's right to be doing this show tonight.
Well, again, it's fascinating to me that you say that people weren't really talking about this, because there were a lot of comparisons over the course of the week to 9/11, and obviously it's not on the same scale of the destruction caused by the two planes, but at the same time, it's an attack. Well, that's true, but still, it's an attack on the country, whether it be, and we didn't know if it was internal or external at the time, but the fact that it can be avoided in conversation like that gives me a little bit of concern that, have we become kind of used to the fact that we're targets now?
Right. And it's what is important to people. Most of the people that I was in conversations with, it was almost an uncomfortable thing, like, oh, are you people okay? Okay, well, now let's talk about something else. Although, like I said, initially that concern was there. I was most impressed by dozens of my students asking me, but also former students who went out of their way to come to, kids that are now in the high school coming to, like, our little section of the middle school being like, hey, Mr. Baldano, is everything okay? I know you're from Boston. So it was oddly enough the kids who were much more in tune and starving for knowledge, and they weren't getting it. Which is why, who knows whether I'll have a job on next week if parents have issue with it. But, we were listening to the radio. We were listening to the radio and listening to, not to mention another station, but EI, because it was the only thing we could get, because our streaming was so horrible, because we had every single computer was taking this stupid big test. And these kids were not frightened, they were confused. And you were talking about Twitter earlier, they didn't know what was truth, what wasn't truth. They didn't know how to distinguish between those things, and no one was giving that to them. So I said, whatever. Okay, I was stuck with my homeroom for 2 hours because of lockdown, because of the testing, not because of anything related to this.
Right.
And I said, all right, go ahead. What do you guys want to know? What do you want? And their things ranged everything from how do you make a bomb out of a pressure cooker? Like, I don't even know what a pressure cooker is. To well, why are we being attacked? Why do people hate us so much? It's something that would be a classic episode of some TV show that's on a very special episode of Baldano's homeroom. And yet these kids were starving for the knowledge, and I felt it was my job to do it. So I don't know if some parents are going to get upset that I did that. In my opinion, it was what was needed by me at that moment, because I needed to share what was going on inside my head.
Sure.
And then also for them, these are our kids. These are the ones that are making decisions in 5, 6, 7 years. And I didn't feel like I could let those questions lie. When it got inappropriate, I was able to stop it. We were listening to some popular morning DJs on that radio station who very quickly wanted to make it about nationality and race and religion. And I was like, okay, kids, at this point we need to shut it off.
Right.
And that was just like, okay, well, now that that's off, let's talk about this having to do with it. And so that was my way to be able to communicate and be able to get things off my mind.
Just on a lighter note, you mentioned the pressure cooker bombs, and a friend of mine, I was talking to him about this earlier this week, and he said, I've never heard of such a thing, of making bombs out of pressure cookers. And I was like, yeah, me either. And he's like, so what I did is I Googled it. And I was like, are you kidding me? He's like, no, I did. I was like, you Googled how to make a he's like, I said, what'd you type into Google? He's like, I typed in how to make a pressure cooker bomb. I was like, man, you do realize that even though it's in the privacy of your own home, like, the internet is not private.
Right.
And he's like, what do you mean? I said, you know that, like, they're monitoring the internet, and anytime anybody types in how to make a pressure cooker bomb, you know, you're probably setting yourself up there, but so...
I think you feel safe that a lot of people were doing it.
Yeah,
So
that's what I
like,
told him. I said, I'm sure you're not the only one that was wondering how that would work. But it's all in the language, you know, that you use when typing into, you know, how to make a pressure cooker bomb and stick it in a backpack, but probably is not the best thing to Google search for this week. But anyway, when you're sharing this with those kids, I mean, what was... Because these kids that you have... just doing some quick math in my head, you know, they were really young when 9/11 happened.
Right.
So to them, it's kind of this abstract, you know, part of history more than it was an experience that they lived. So what was kind of their reactions to the fact that people would want to do this?
I think their reaction was, is this something that's going to happen here? And I think that their other reaction was, I just don't get that. Like, why would you want to kill, like, people? Why would you want to put something in motion that's going to hurt people that bad? Or more importantly, because I don't feel many of them are connected to anything. They want to know how you could believe in something so much that you would then go out and destroy something else. And that's really kind of what the discussion was. You know, and to be honest with you, these kids are much more connected to school shootings. They're much more connected to the things that are part of their world and obviously more current. You know, 9/11 to them is abstract as a hostage situation would have been to us in, you know, growing up in the 80s.
Right.
And so far outside of their realm, and it's something they're constantly inundated with, but have no real understanding of. You know, to them, Bin Laden was on the plane. You know, I mean, just the themes and the concepts are so blurred that it just becomes this bad thing happened. Saddam Hussein was on one plane, Bin Laden was on the other. You know, and that's not, you know, that's not just stupidity or, you know, something like that. It's more of this kind of like a mixture of it, and, you know, this kind of hearing buzzwords and hearing these things that's kind of thrown together until they become a wash, as opposed to being like, no, I was living in Boston when that happened. I was working in a jail, and the kids were like, we all want to escape, not because, you know, we want to see our families, but because we don't want to die here. We're going to be blown up. Like that real tangible kind of the America is being attacked feeling. They didn't have the America was being attacked feeling. They just didn't know why people were attacking that specific place, you know, at that specific time. You know, and as an extension of that, I run a photography class, and we have to be doing photojournalism. And you know, everything that you guys were talking about earlier really struck upon, because once again, I didn't shy away, and it was like, okay, you know, here's the cover of Sports Illustrated this week. Here's the cover of Time this week. Is this appropriate? Is this not appropriate? You know, we were looking at it. It was funny. We were 9/11. I showed them pictures of 9/11. I showed them, you know, you can still get the Herald cover online, and we were discussing whether that was appropriate, and you know, then they were also looking at, you know, the infamous kiss after World War II, and they were looking at the lunar landing, and they were looking at the Ruby killing Oswald, and 9/11 was as abstract to them as those things. It was as much of a part of history, but then all of a sudden to be able to have this really graphic and grim example of both the courage, but then also the senselessness of some of it. And for these kids to the first time being like, yeah, we see these kinds of things all the time. Why the hell are they doing that? You know, like I'm not sure if this is how, you know, I want to have this information communicated to me, or is it important to have it communicated that way? Is it important to see those images? And so it was good to be able to have a discussion with these 14-year-olds about this kind of stuff, because there weren't a lot of 30-somethings here talking about it.
Now, I don't know. I know, of course, that you're a a follower of Lauren Coleman's work and of his Copycat Effect blog and his Twilight Language website. And have you been following along with some of the things that he's been posting up?
No.
All right.
And here's I think maybe there will be time for that.
Mm-hmm.
Behind the scenes, no one knows except for you and I how much I was going back and forth with you during the Dark Knight Rises incident.
Right.
About connections and about wait a minute, all this stuff and being able to pull it out and be able to talk about this and analyze this stuff and is there a bigger context of this and is there a conspiracy theory and who's controlling minds and things like that. This was just way too close for me. And I think that's an interesting debate to have too. Like when can we sit back on these events and then say like, okay, now let's try to put it in this kind of context, this kind of stuff that I don't think, for everything that I feel about Lauren Coleman, I don't think that it would be necessarily inappropriate. I don't know what he's posted, but I don't think it's inappropriate for someone to be doing that. I just couldn't do it.
Right.
And I just couldn't be involved in that. But go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, I thought about contacting him to join us tonight, and I just had that feeling of it needs to be a little bit further away from the story before we do that, before we go down that road. But I'm glad that he's, following the story as he is. But at the same time, I think that there needs to be some time, because some of the connections that are made, and I know that you're, of course, a big, you see connections pretty much right away to a lot of things. And when I say connections, for those who aren't familiar, I'm not talking about, Chris knows, like, who these people were working with type of thing. But there are kind of commonalities, similar threads that run through different stories that have kind of a meta feeling to them. Right. And I think that, when we come out of this and when we're far enough away from this, we will see a lot of these, and it will be something that we'll have to address sometime in the future.
And I think part of that was because, unfortunately for me, the connection was there. I mean, I went to school and lived on Boylston Street. I lived in Kenmore for years. I shopped at the Star Market that's in Peru. I went up and down that street 1,000 times. My grandfather was an MIT cop for 40 years. My wife worked at MIT. She worked at the Southcoast Center when it first opened. She helped design it, design the inside of it. I lived on the street parallel to Arsenal Street for years. The connections were there, unfortunately, for me, because these were tangible places for me. These were places that I had seen, that were part of my story, that were part of my life, extending now to the UMass Dartmouth and New Bedford stuff that was going on, the stuff that was going on, which we didn't know what it was at the time at UMass. I mean, these are like the story of Chris Balzano being told, and like little by little chisels being hit into it, and blood being stained on it. These were streets that I've walked with my own 2 feet. And so I think that, unfortunately, for me, the connections were too close and too personal to start thinking in some kind of abstract, bigger picture.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, it probably will be a while before we can do that, but it's a conversation that we'll definitely have somewhere down the line.
Right.
Now, like I said, we felt like we were kind of insulated from this, and maybe some of those walls were kind of self-built. But as you said, you're connected to that area, and you could envision all of this in your mind as it was taking place. Even being all those miles away now, how connected did you feel to everything as it was going on?
Like it was my street. Like it was my house. Like it was my neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, I am a kid who was born and grown in that area, and then I was in New Hampshire for a very long time. For most of my kind of middle school and high school years, and some people are like, well, you're not really from Boston. You lived in New Hampshire for so long, and I've been kind of had that shot at me quite a bit lately. And I'm like, yeah, but nothing connected me to me more than that. I mean, my formative years were spent on those streets that were attacked. My marriage was formed. My wife and I, her bridesmaids were calling in being like, isn't that where you lived? Having being from different parts of Florida. I mean, this was the foundation of my adult years. And I spent a lot of time in those areas. Chris Pittman and I made food for half the cops we were seeing on TV. We were SBA. And I'm seeing, and these are not abstract law enforcement that should just be saluted and commended for all they were doing. It was like, dude, I know that guy. He used to order steak and cheese. And so I felt very much like it was playing with my family and with the thing that I am things that I am connected to.
Well, I do have to say that there's no other word, the heroes who have come through in this story and throughout this week have just been amazing. And not just the people who are involved here, but the people who have come from all over to help out. I mean, I just remember smiling when you hear some of these stories. Like, as this manhunt's going on yesterday, the NYPD is coming up with grills and food.
Right.
And they're cooking food for everybody that's involved in this, and all these different things that have come through. And, of course, the individual stories of heroism that we heard, Jeff Bowman and the cowboy and all these other stories that we've heard over the course of the week. It's just, to me, and I tweeted this out yesterday, and I know a lot of other people have too, and I firmly believe it. We should have a duck boat parade for all these people. And it'll be far bigger than any one of the championship celebrations, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I'm holding on to even at the beginning. And I wanted to respond to some people who had responded to my stuff. I from the very beginning, I was beyond rage and anger, and I know that that's a legitimate emotion, and I know that, but I'm not there, and I'm not sure I can go there just because. Whereas this is an assault on our country, on the city that I love. I mean, Boston is my city. It to me was so much more about healing and so much more about the spirit of a city that I can't let that other stuff creep in. What'll happen will happen. And that was my guiding light about the whole week. What'll happen in terms of who did this will happen. Right now, I can feel nothing but pride in being from Boston and sadness. I couldn't feel rage. I couldn't do it.
Right.
I couldn't feel hate either. I know that's horrible. I couldn't feel hate. It was so much not about them or anyone that might be connected to it that we might find out about. It was so much more about the people who were involved, and I hold on to that.
Well, if I can find it during the break, there was a great letter that was sent out on social media by a person, by a priest in training. And if I can find it, I'll read that coming up in the second hour. But I do want to kind of shift gears away from this a little bit in hour two, if that's all right with everybody here, because there are some things in the paranormal world that went on this week that I do want to talk about. And Chris, you're welcome to stay for that, or you can go. It's up to you. But one thing that I do want to point out and remind everybody about is that on Monday at 2:50 p.m., both WBSM and Fun 107 will be having a moment of radio silence in honor of the victims of this tragedy, and also a lot of the Boston stations are doing that as well, and I'm sure other stations across the country will follow suit. And I've kind of been asking for people to observe a social media moment of silence too at that time, not to tweet or post anything on Facebook or Instagram any photos or any of that kind of stuff, kind of a social media moment of silence, because it's the only way that everybody out there can observe the same moment of silence and let the world know that they're doing so. So if everybody wants to just join us in that on Monday at 2:50 p.m. But just so you know, the station will be silent, and they're actually probably going to think that we're on the air because of, when they hear the beeps going off and everything, they're going to be like, oh, somebody must have lit Spooky Southcoast guys. And no, it's going to be on purpose. It's going to be an intentional moment of silence. So be sure to tune in if you are out and about and kind of just bow your head and observe at the same time. So we're going to take a break here coming up for the news. Like I said, on the other side, if anybody wants to call in and share their own thoughts, of course, the phone lines are open throughout the program, 508-996-0500, 1-877-996-1420. You can also email us, spookycrew@spookysouthcoast.com. You can tweet us at spookysc, or you can always post up on our Facebook page as well, facebook.com/spookysouthcoast. Those are the ways to get a hold of us if you do have anything that you want to share with us. But again, of course, your phone calls are most welcome. Coming up on the second, try to find that letter and read it. And also, I do want to talk about some paranormal stuff that happened this week, because this also struck close to home, this story that came out. And although the parties that were involved hopefully will join us at a future date to discuss it, I do kind of want to just throw the situation out there of what happens when someone that you know and somebody that you work with and have investigated with is accused of fraud. So stay tuned. We'll talk about all of that coming up. And again, if you do want to call in, the numbers are 508-996-0500, 1-877-996-1420. They're up on SpookySouthCoast.com and WBSM.com as well, if you check it out. We'll be right back with more here on Spooky South Coast.
The station the South Coast turns to for local news, talk, weather, and sports. WBSM New Bedford, AM 1420, WBSM.
From ABC News, I'm Chuck Severson. The parents may be coming.
In a tearful phone call with ABC News on Saturday, the mother of the suspected Boston bomber said she and her husband planned to travel to the U.S. to see their youngest son, captured Friday night. She insists both her sons were set up, that her eldest son was investigated by the FBI 2 years ago because she says he loved Islam and didn't do anything wrong. The mother says her family has been shattered, having lost both her sons. A thought, she says, that makes her so sick she's constantly calling for an ambulance. I don't know how to live with this, she says. Kirat Radia, ABC News, Makhachkala, Dagestan.
We're a part of Russia. The FBI was not monitoring, but used to, says ABC News senior justice correspondent Pierre Thomas.
The FBI acknowledged it interviewed Tamerlan in 2011 based on a tip from the Russians. The Russians said he was a radical Islamist preparing to leave the U.S., possibly for a trip to the Caucasus. After looking into Tamerlan's phone records, websites he visited, and associates, the FBI found no ties to terrorists. By law, FBI officials said, monitoring had to stop, barring new negative information.
Tamerlan died after a gun battle this week. He was charged in Cambridge, Mass. with beating his former girlfriend and started posting violent videos on his YouTube channel. On the condition of the hospitalized younger brother, Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick.
It's serious, but he's stable. He's not yet able to speak.
Should he be tried in a military court? Some Republican lawmakers say they think so, including New York Congressman Peter King.
The purpose in doing this is to get as much intelligence as we can to find out how far this conspiracy went, who was involved in it, who provided the money, are there any other sellers out there?
Senator Carl Levin, Michigan Democrat, chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, says he's not aware of any evidence so far that the Boston suspect is part of any organized group, let alone Al-Qaeda or the Taliban, the only organizations whose members are subject to military detention under the law. You're listening to ABC News.
If you like painting and saving, ask Sherwin-Williams and save 40% on paints and stains during our 40-day super sale, April 19th through the 22nd. With 40% off our great paints and stains and 30% off painting supplies, you can give your whole home a color makeover. But hurry, these savings are so super, they won't be around for long. Find your nearest store at sherwinwilliams.com/sale. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
Ah, the sound of small business getting busier. Can you tell which one is using AT&T? Truth is, they all are, because businesses of all kinds can find AT&T customizable plans that fit their exact needs. Whether it's broadband, mobility, or nationwide voice, at AT&T, we can help your business get humming.
I need more receipt paper, please.
Call 1-855-877-4288 today and ask about special offers available for new small business packages. AT&T, we think possible.
A celebration in downtown Colorado, Denver, Colorado, turned into terror with gunfire. 2 people were shot in the leg. Police say they will both survive, and they're looking for 1 or 2 suspects. ABC's Carol McKinley in Denver.
It's the first time that people were holding a rally, and they came here from as far away as New Zealand to celebrate the fact that the state of Colorado just legalized recreational marijuana. Well, gunfire erupted in the early afternoon. Luckily, there were many Denver police officers downtown just to keep this crowd of thousands under control.
Search crews have recovered the bodies of 5 snowboarders who were killed in a backcountry avalanche on Colorado's Loveland Pass. The sheriff says officials are pretty certain the snowboarders triggered the avalanche, which he says was about 600 yards wide and 8 feet deep. Some residents of the town of West Texas were allowed back in their homes tonight. Their town was under a curfew. They were evacuated on Wednesday after that big fertilizer factory explosion that killed 14 people. Although this man and his wife can stay, they will not. Their children under 18 are not allowed back into the area, and the water remains off.
You can't shower or use the restroom, so we've got some clothes up to get us by tonight, and then we'll come back tomorrow and gather up more stuff.
Rescuers and relief teams trying to get supplies into the rural hills of China's Sichuan province right now after an earthquake has killed at least 179 people. This is ABC News.
Trying to sell your old car? Instead, donate your vehicle to Heritage for the Blind. Pickup is free and your donation is tax deductible. Just call 1-800-895-8035. Heritage for the Blind accepts cars, vans, trucks, and boats, whether they run or not. Donate your vehicle and you'll receive a free 3-day vacation voucher to over 50 locations. Call 1-800-895-8035. That's 1-800-895-8035.
Chuck Sievertson, ABC News.
So, Jacqueline. Yes, Mom? I wanted to talk to you about something, and... Oh, wait, hold on. I just got a text. Oh, there's another one. Wow. Busy me. So, anyway...
Oh, wait, Mom. I just got a message. My friends keep commenting on my comment. Oh, there's another one. So many comments on my comment.
Oh, I can't wait to watch TV tonight. Playoffs!
Hey, guys, check out my new video game. Wait, Mom, what? Huh?
Hold
What'd you say? Wait a sec, what?
This weekend, unplug. Take your family to the forest. There's nothing in the world like experiencing nature firsthand. Trees, past, bluebirds, streams. Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. To find the forest nearest you, go to discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Welcome to spooky Southcoast. Look, I know the supernatural is something that isn't supposed to happen, but it does happen.
AM 1420, WBSM presents Spooky South Coast with your hosts Tim Weisberg and Matt Costa.
Welcome back, hour number 2, Spooky South Coast. Tim Weisberg here, along with Science Advisor Matt Moniz. And we normally talk about the paranormal each and every Saturday night. Tonight we started off the show discussing the events of the Boston bombing and everything that happened this past week. I do kind of want to switch gears a little bit, though, here in the second hour. But again, if anybody wants to call in, share their own thoughts and feelings, just get anything off their chest, 508-996-0500. 1-877-996-1420. Those are the numbers if you want to do that. But also, we do want to let some people know about some different things that are coming up. One of these things that I want to share with everybody is a fundraiser, and I know that everybody's promoting the One Fund for Boston now, but this is something that we've been talking about on my Twitter and Facebook. I've been mentioning it, and I'll be promoting it a little bit more as it comes up. But coming up on the... I gotta find the date. I just found the wrong information from last year. But they are coming up. The 14th annual Champions Fighting Cancer Walk is being held by Signature Healthcare in Brockton, and it's I'm going to find the actual date that's coming up. But a friend of ours, a friend of the show, her team is Amy's Angels Walkers, and they'll be taking part in this Champions Fighting Cancer Walk. And we want to make sure that anybody that wants to donate will do so. And do so for their team, because they are supporters of Spooky Southcoast and friends of ours, so we want to help out their team. It's coming up on Sunday, May 5th. It will actually take place 8 to 10:30 a.m. will be registration at Brockton High School, and then at 10 a.m. the shuttle leaves for the short walk, because you can either do the 1.5 mile walk or you can do the complete walk. But it's going to be coming up Sunday, May 5th, leaving from Brockton High School, and it's the Champions Fighting Cancer Walk. And again, if you want to make a donation, our team is Team Amy's Angels, and if you go to signature-healthcare.org, you can find all the links to make your pledges there. They're also on Facebook under Champions Cancer Walk. So again, I'll have that out on social media too as the weeks come up, so that people can take part in that and then maybe go and cheer on Amy's team as well. Also coming up in May 19th, from 10 to 5 at the Seaport Inn and Marina right here in Fairhaven, Massachusetts, will be the Southcoast Toy and Comic Show, and we are going to be having some of the guests, the celebrity guests from that, on the show the night before, on May 18th. And so we still aren't sure exactly who we're going to have here on the show, but I got to tell you, I'm excited about who some of these guests are, including we could be having Gil Gerard here on the program.
Buck Rogers.
Buck Rogers himself, Gil Gerard. And a lot of people, and they don't have it up there, they have him listed as Buck Rogers, Star Trek New Voyages Phase 2, and The Doctors, but correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't Gil Gerard the main character on Sidekicks? Were there any Reyes Jr.?
I believe you are correct.
Right. So, I want to talk to him about that. Also, Mike Quinn from Return of the Jedi, The Dark Crystal, and Muppet Operator. He'll be Monies. I know a lot about Star Wars, but I don't know everything about Star Wars. Do you know the name of that character?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, anyway, Mike Quinn from Star Wars, and Sidney Morgan from Tron and Caddyshack. I think a lot of people probably remember her more from Caddyshack than from Tron, but I'm a big Tron guy. My text message sound for a long time was Master Control saying, "End of line." And I had to change it because I was tired of explaining to everybody what it was from. And also our friend Brian Harnois from Ghost Hunters International in Haunted, Rhode Island. He'll be there as well. So I don't know who's going to be in the studio on May 18th, but they'll all be at the Seaport Inn and Marina on May 19th if you want to go and check that event out. Admission is only $8, and kids under 6 are free. And, of course, there's also going to be tons of comic book artists there as well, including...
What about the General Lee?
General Lee will be there, too, and I'm really excited for that because I haven't seen the General Lee since I was a wee lad, since I was about 5 years old when I got my picture taken with it. So it's time for an updated version, definitely for sure. So if you do come out and check this out, you'll see some great vendors and artists who, if you are a frequenter of these events, you'll recognize a lot of these names, including our friend Frankie B. Washington, and he's just great. I mean, everybody that's there is amazing artists, and eventually we'll work it out. I've been talking to Steve about this. They got to get my favorite comic book artist of all time, Keith Giffen, to come to this thing. He's the guy who created the best comic book character ever, Ambush Bug. A lot of people don't love the Ambush Bug, but I do. But anyway, so there's going to be lots of artists there to check out, vendors, and of course all the celebrity guests. Again, May 19th, 2013, from 10 to 5 at the Seaport Inn and Marina right here in Fairhaven at 110 Middle Street. If you want to find out more about the event, just go to southcoasttoyandcomic.com. And I'm going to mention this now, even though we'll be promoting it a lot over the summer and as we get closer to November. But I just want to let people know about this so that they can kind of follow along as things are added on. But the Rhode Island Comic-Con, which is put on by the same company, Altered Reality, that's happening November 2nd to the 3rd. And it'll be 10 to 7 on Saturday and 10 to 5 on Sunday at the Rhode Island Convention Center. And every time I see a new announcement of who's coming to this thing, I just get more and more blown away. It is going to be amazing to go to Rhode Island and see such huge stars who also, by the way, will be joining us on the show prior to the event. I'm hoping that maybe we can even broadcast live from Providence that night and grab some of these people. No, I am serious. Because look at who we've got. I'm just going to throw out some of these names, but you want to go to ricomiccon.com to see all the names. But Nichelle Nichols?
Oh, hell yeah.
I mean, who's not going to go there to see Lieutenant Uhura from Star Trek? Billy D. Williams?
Yeah.
I just want to take the man out, buy him a Colt 45. Because I think it's kind of gross. So I don't know if he was just doing those commercials for the money or if he enjoys the product. Ernie Hudson from Ghostbusters.
Yep.
He's going to be there. David Anders from Once Upon a Time. Raphael Sparge from Once Upon a Time. This is fantastic to me. They're going to have a weird science reunion. Anthony Michael Hall, who a lot of people know from Dead Zone, 16 Candles, shows like that. And also Island Mitchell Smith, who does not do any of these events. He's going to be there as well. And if I can find, just to make sure that she's still up on the website, let me just scroll down here a little bit here. So many people. Yes, Dana Barron. Dana Barron from National Lampoon's Vacation will be there, as well as Anthony Michael Hall. So Rusty and Audrey from the first Vacation film will all be in attendance. They're having a Weekend at Bernie's reunion with Andrew McCarthy and Jonathan Silverman. Now, you know how people go to these events and they dress up, and it's called cosplay, you know, they all come up as their favorite characters. I think I'm going to go as Bernie. And I think I'm going to kind of go as Dead Bernie from Weekend at Bernie's 2, where the music kind of makes me move around. So I think that's going to be my cosplay for that night. This is unbelievable.
No way.
They're going to have Mayor Adam West from Quahog, Rhode Island. He'll be there. Burt Ward, Julie Newmar, Yvonne Craig. That's like almost everybody from the original Batman that you'd ever want to see that's still with us.
Yeah.
This is, I lost it when I saw this announcement. William Zabka and Martin Kove from Karate Kid.
Yep.
We're talking about Johnny and Sensei Kreese, both there. Cobra Kai representing at the Rhode Island Comic Con. Chris Balzano's coming up to hang out with Nicholas Brendan from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Josh Stewart from Walking Dead and Dark Knight Rises. Dana Snyder from Aqua Teen Hunger Force. So we have a couple other zombie characters from The Walking Dead. We have
the girl that played Sophia from Walking Dead.
Is she there?
Yeah.
Where?
Far right.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even realize that. I didn't recognize her
I
as a
did.
zombie.
I'm a Walking Dead fan, so.
Yeah, I watched the show. I just didn't recognize her in zombie form, so she'll be there. They're having a huge Power Rangers reunion. Jason David Frank, the Green Ranger, Walter Jones, the Black Ranger, David Yost, the Blue Power Ranger, Bulk and Skull will be there. So anybody that's a Power Rangers fan wants to check this thing out.
Admiral Akbar.
It just keeps getting more and more names each time I go to this website. Kathy Monroe from Empire Strikes Back making her first U.S. appearance ever. Paul Blake, who was Greedo, and by the way, who did not shoot first. All right? Remember that. Greedo did not shoot first.
What's the original cut?
Right. Tim Rose, of course, Admiral Akbar. He was also in Howard the Duck and the Dark Crystal. Bonnie, I don't know how to say her last name, but the actress who played Aunt Beru in Revenge of the Sith. Barry Holland. Robert Picardo from Star Trek Voyager and Supernatural. And I remembered him as the gym teacher from the Wonder Years. And so that's what I want to talk to him about. I want to talk about making Kevin Arnold climb a rope. And Ethan Phillips from Star Trek Voyager. If you've seen Ted...
Oh, God.
This is incredible. Sam Jones is going to be there. And I can only imagine how many people are going to try to party with him, like Ted did. But Sam Jones, Melody Anderson from Flash Gordon will be there. Mark Singer from V and Beastmaster. John Amos from Beastmaster and Good Times. I thought he died, John Amos.
Yeah. No, he's still alive.
I think I confused his Good Times character with real life. And, of course, Jimmy Walker from Good Times will be there. You know what I have to say about that? Dynamite. Again, I mentioned Dana Barron. James Hampton, who was the uncle in Teen Wolf. Dustin Diamond. Don't Call Him Screech from Saved by the Bell. Oh, I didn't even realize this. Oh, my God, they're having Strickland from Back to the Future there. As well as Claudia Wells. I can't wait to have him call me a slacker. You're a slacker, Weisberg. Let's see. Lollipop Chainsaw, Jessica Negri will be there. Ivy Doom Kitty, who's a famous cosplayer. They've got a bunch of... Nicole Marie, who's a world-famous cosplay player and a friend of ours on Facebook. Some wrestling stars will be there as well. Jimmy Superfly Snuka, the only wrestler to ever offer me a cigarette. He'll be there. Gremlina, our friend Gremlina will be there from Glow. Kathy St. George, Playboy Playmate. Tom DiNucci. Let's see, and some paranormal representation, too, as well. John Brightman and Vin Pacheco from New England Paranormal Research, Brian Harnois, and Joe Chin from Ghost Hunters and Ghost Hunters International. So look at that lineup. I mean, that's amazing. And they just keep adding more names. In fact, I think I saw something earlier that was a new addition to it. I don't know if it was one that we mentioned there, but I'm going to just scroll down here to the Rhode Island Comic-Con tweets from Twitter. And you can follow them on Twitter, and of course you can also go to the website. Oh, yeah, here we go. Here's a new name that isn't up there yet. Larry Kenny, the voice of Lion-O and Count Chocula. He's going to be there. Tiger Sharks, Silverhawks, all those cartoons from the 80s that kids like me grew up watching. Larry Kenny's going to be there. So it's amazing. Just more and more names added each day. RIComiccon.com. The tickets to that are incredibly affordable, too. So if you want to get them now, because I can only imagine it's going to be impossible to get into this thing. Seriously, if you want to go in on Saturday, $25. Sunday, $25. You want to go both days? Great deal. $35. $35 to go in and meet all these people.
Now, we'll be able to get in because we're going to work it, right?
Well, I can't really speak to that, but I am going to be part of the event itself. So we'll have more information on that at the end. But I'm sure, we will have a table there.
Okay.
I know that for sure. So, we will definitely have a presence at the RI Comic-Con. Now, keep in mind, though, that when you go there, you're paying the money to get in, but, of course, there's going to be money. You have to have money with you to buy autographs and to have photos taken with people. And you can get some pictures in advance, autograph pictures in advance. Like, for example, if you want to get a picture of Adam West autographed, $60. Just throwing out some other names here. $30 for Andrew McCarthy. Let's see, who's the least expensive? Let's see who draws the least amount of money. Burt Ward and Adam West are each $60. They seem to be the most expensive. A lot of people in the $20 range. $40 for Nichelle Nichols. Let's see, $50 for Gremlina. Our friend Gremlina coming through for the fans. She only needs $15 for an autograph. $30 for Ernie Hudson. So maybe we can have him sign one of our Ghostbusters jumpsuits that we bought a couple years ago and never wore. Maybe we can have him sign one of those.
I wear mine all the time.
Do you?
Yeah.
I say maybe mine doesn't fit so well, so maybe we'll have him sign mine. We'll put it up for charity. And see if we can get some money. But it's going to be quite an amazing event. There's VIP packages, too, if you want to kind of get in early to some of these events and participate in some of these exclusive things that are going on. You can buy these VIP packages as well. Get it all on the website, ricomiccon.com. And, of course, there'll be more information about this and your chance to purchase tickets if you come to the Southcoast Toy and Comic Show on May 19th here in Fairhaven. So, really, if you're a geek like us, I mean, this is gold. I just can't believe every time I look at it. And I didn't even go into the page where I mentioned all the artists that are going to be there either. So check it all out for yourself, ricomiccon.com, if you want to find out all the information, and southcoasttoyandcomic.com. So makes me really wish that I could just do this kind of stuff all the time, because there's things like this that go on all over the country, but I can't spend the time to travel and to go to all these things. All right. I'm going to go a little bit, I don't want to say dangerous ground here, but there's a website out there called Worst Paranormal. And
I see where you're going.
What they do is they expose people who they feel are committing fraudulent activities in the paranormal field. It's one of these paranormal watchdog sites that we've talked about in the past, and it's actually run by somebody who has experience in paranormal television, and he had a recent report. Again, I'm not going to get into specifics because I haven't had a chance to speak to all the parties involved, and I haven't given them a chance to have their equal time, but it's a person that we know and that we've worked with in the past who has been accused of falsifying evidence. So now I want to talk in completely broad strokes here, Moniz, because I'm going to be extending the offer to both parties to join us in the future and talk about this, as well as the people who put forth the initial report. But You've been doing this for a long time. You've been doing this on an independent basis for a long time.
Yeah.
I think part of the reason why you do it on an independent basis, I'm just guessing, is to avoid getting to situations like this. But what do you do if someone that you know has been accused of falsifying evidence, but yet you've worked with this person and your reputation can kind of be tied into theirs?
Okay, this has happened to me on a couple of different occasions, as well as being accused myself. All right. Number one, accusation doesn't mean that it's absolute.
Right.
All it is just an accusation.
I'll let you finish what you're saying, but we'll go back to that.
Okay. Usually, when you get cases like this, especially in this field, a lot of it has to do with egos, or in some cases, an axe to grind with the person that is being accused. I am not completely familiar with the website you're talking about. I know of its existence, but I don't really know who's behind it, and I haven't really followed
Well,
it.
it's Topher Young who was involved with PRS and Paranormal State.
Okay.
Not that matters, but I'm just
No, it just tells me where they're from and who they are. Okay. I don't really know Topher, so I can't speak to him. I know who he's trying to accuse, and all the work I've done with him, I haven't seen any improprieties. Doesn't mean that the possibility is zero, but I find it curious. The accusation's curious, as I do with anybody.
Well, getting back to what you said about it just being an accusation. In this field, unfortunately, an accusation is enough. There doesn't always have to be... It's funny, for something where the idea is the pursuit of proof of the paranormal, we don't necessarily need proof to come down on somebody if we feel that they have been misleading people. And I don't know. It's a slippery slope for us because, again, like I said, this person has been associated with us, and I have never seen any reason to question what he does, and that's why I want to give him the opportunity to come on to an episode of the show sometime in the future and defend himself. And if he's listening, shoot me a text and let me know if that works for you. But also, we're part of Legend Trips, which is a company that takes people out into haunted locations and tries to provide a paranormal experience for people. And again, we don't guarantee that you'll have a paranormal experience.
No.
But, the possibility is there, and we try to do everything we can.
Especially given our last one.
Oh, that's the new gold standard. And I definitely want to talk to you about that before we go off the air, because we didn't get a chance to speak to you about it last week when you were out of the studio. But that's kind of one of the fears that I have when we go to those things, and especially this last one at the Houghton Mansion, because I had such a profound personal experience that I don't care if anybody else believes it. I know that it happened, and it changed me. It changed me as an investigator. It changed me as a person. So for me, that's enough. But as I shared with people when I was telling them about what happened, I didn't know if I wanted to go public with what happened, because I don't want to be the guy who runs the events and has all the stuff happen to him. Because there has been significant things that have happened to me at these events. So I don't want people to think like I am making things up to help business.
Well, I've been with you on personal investigations, and yeah, I've seen things happen to you. You happen to be a magnet for, a lot of it you bring upon yourself, but yeah. So to me, it's not surprising that stuff happens around you.
But there will be that speculation from people and that cynicism from people that, maybe I'm making things up. And when you're somebody who charges people money to go on investigations, a lot of people feel that there is an onus to make sure that things happen. And I think part of the problem is that people are coming at it from the wrong approach. When they're conducting these events and conducting these investigations for pay, they're essentially promoting it as, I'm going to take you out to a place where you can have a paranormal experience. They need to get away from that. And they need to kind of focus on, I'm bringing you to a place where I can teach you how to investigate in a spot where there has been significant activity and maybe you will get something. And it's kind of on the public as well to put aside the expectations when they're buying that ticket that something's going to happen. So that's kind of my 2 cents on the business aspect of it. But in terms of just being an investigator, I mean, have you ever felt pressure in an investigation to come up with something? I mean, I know that you wouldn't falsify anything, but have you ever gone into an investigation where it's like, that if you come up empty-handed, you're not going to help the people feel any better. You're not going to help the location feel any better. I mean...
Well, usually on private investigations, a lot of them are very happy when I found that, the knocking on the wall is actually because of the radiator system or some animal that's behind the wall or what have you. So to find nothing in a lot of private cases, yeah, they're happy about it. Larger public locations, if they're looking to augment their coffers by having people come in and do tours and investigations, when I find nothing on a lot of occasions, it's like, you sure you didn't get anything? It's like, if I don't, I don't. And if I do, usually these places are the first people to find out. So, but I've been doing this for a long time, and it's not surprising to me to get nothing on investigations. More often than not, 95% of the time, I come up with nothing in terms of stuff that I can definitively show. I have a lot of personal experiences, as you and I have had on many occasions, when you shut off the tape recorder, shut off the camera,
or don't even bring them in with you.
Bring them in with you, stuff happens. You bring all the gadgets and doodads in, and nothing happens for most of the time. Yeah, so
I don't understand, and maybe it's because it's just my own approach to the paranormal. In my own thought process of what a paranormal investigator should be, but I don't see any kind of advantage to, and this is not related to the story that we're talking about, but just, again, speaking in generalities, there's all these groups. Worth Paranormal, the website, is notorious for pointing out when people have falsified evidence, be it photos or EVPs or anything like that. And there was just an example with our friends at Darkness Radio exposing somebody from the Rhine Institute for having an EVP that was just a watermark sound recording, essentially. So I don't understand the need to promote false evidence to make yourself look better.
That's if you know it's false. A lot of times people can misidentify something thinking it's paranormal, where somebody with a little bit more experience realizes, oh, that's just a mark on the tape that they're misinterpreting from the manufacturer. Or,
some of these groups that, especially that Worth Paranormal and other paranormal watchdog sites point out, they'll put up photos on their website that they've caught in an investigation that are clearly made with a ghost app.
Yeah.
And when they're called out on it, they will vehemently defend that photo, instead of just giving up and being like, all right, you showed it to me. All right, maybe we got fooled by one of our investigators, or maybe we got fooled by a homeowner. There's kind of some degree of plausible deniability. Like, for example, if you showed me a ghost app photo, I could never tell you that it came from a ghost app because I've never used one of them. And I've never even downloaded one or looked at one. So my only experience with ghost app photos is when I've seen it on the internet when somebody's like, that's from the ghost app, that ghost is one of the ones that's in the app. But I can also tell when I look at one, something doesn't seem right here, and then I will just Google search it and find, a similar photo.
To do a ghost app, most of them are, like you said, they're online. That's the first thing you do, especially one of the real good indicators is they're relatively clear. You know, and it looks...
And a lot of them use famous ghost shots. So if you're familiar with, you know, the cemetery in Chicago, if you're familiar with, you know, the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall, then you're going to see these popping up, and you're going to know, that that's where they came from. But I just don't understand why they would need to have false evidence to promote themselves. I want to know what you're like as an investigator. I don't want to know what kind of evidence you've got. Whatever evidence you've captured doesn't make you a better investigator in my eyes if I'm just perusing the website looking for a group to call in. And first of all, you know, in a lot of parts of this country, there is only kind of one group in the area, so you win by default. But in these areas where there are competition and they do feel the need to get themselves up there more, you know, a testimonial from a client. And again, I know that we hate to use the word client when describing these cases, but, you know, a testimonial from the person who initiated contact from you for an investigation is more valuable to me than whatever photo you're going to show that you caught, because it's a crapshoot capturing evidence. It really is. I know people who have caught it that weren't trying, and I know people who have tried and have never caught it.
How many security cameras have recorded items? You know, how many trail cams have picked up, you know, things?
So that doesn't impress me. The photo that you put up that you caught doesn't impress me. In fact, the more photos that I see of evidence, the more skeptical I am of your group. Because I'm starting to think, gee, you know, they seem to get a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Well,
and then I want to know more about your techniques. I want to know more about your individual makeup of your group, and that's the information that should be out there. That should be what you're using to promote yourself.
I get lucky picking up stuff probably once every 3 or 4 years. And how often do I go out? I'm out there every weekend.
But there's the other side of the coin too now, where there's become a cottage industry of getting yourself on TV. And this is something that you have to deal with in a role that you perform outside of this show. And that's even worse. Because now, you know, it's one thing to take a photo and fake it and put it on your website as evidence that your group is caught. You know, that's one thing. Chances are you could probably exist for quite a while before anybody finds you out and rats you out. You know, without sites like Where's Paranormal and other watchdog sites, maybe that wouldn't even happen at all. But it's a whole other can of worms when you use that quote-unquote evidence to get yourself on My Ghost Story, Paranormal Witness, you know, any of these types of programs, where now you're going to put it out there to millions of people that are watching on television. You don't think that they're going to be able to say right away, hey, that's the picture from the Ghost app. And I know that the production companies aren't as well-versed as people in the paranormal field are at debunking a lot of this stuff, although they're getting better. But
well, they're production companies. They're more interested in the story, not...
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to them if it's true or not. They even say at the beginning that they're not endorsing your story. You know, they're just allowing you to tell it. So we're in a whole different world now where you can't get away with it. So why do you even try? That's what I don't understand. Why do you even try? What is so important that you need to put your reputation of yourself, of your entire group? Because keep in mind now, even if you're in a group that has nothing to do with somebody falsifying evidence and you're just part of the team and, you know, somebody else does it, it doesn't matter. It stains you. It stains everybody that's worked with that group. It puts that association in people's minds of, well, you know, maybe they're not completely on the up and up. So I just don't see the benefit of it. It boggles my mind that people feel the need to go to those lengths.
I agree. It's shameful, but it happens. I think what it is, they see it as the quick ride to the front of the line, so to speak. If I get enough of these...
Well, what do you get from being at the front of the line?
Well, just what you're saying. It gets them the fame, quote-unquote, the notoriety amongst other people to be picked for the next paranormal show. Show number 8,756 now, that, you know.
But you don't get anything. I mean, I'd like to think that we're, not to toot our own horn, but we're pretty close to the front of the line here on Spooky Southcoast. And We're certainly not rich from it. We're not well known from it. We're just, I'd like to think that we're respected because we don't do this kind of stuff. But I mean, we're certainly not we don't get paid for doing the show. We don't make any money for coming in here. We don't make money off of, the TV things that we do. And I'm probably going to borrow $5 from you to get something to eat on the way home. Yeah. I was turning in cans this afternoon to buy gas. So we're really not getting anything from being further ahead of anybody else.
If anything, it costs us.
Right, it does. It does. So
remember, donations to Spooky South Coast.
just go to PayPal and donate tim@SpookySouthCoast.com, and that'll help the show. I say this every week now, but I got to just reiterate, getting really concerned about that laptop.
Yeah.
Crashed about 2 minutes before we were about to go on the air, inexplicably. We still have no idea why. And it's like the third week in a row.
The power of Windows compels you. The power of Windows compels you.
So I think, if anybody was ever feeling generous, now's the time. Tim@SpookySouthCoast.com is.
Please donate your old laptops, too.
I'll take that, too. Whatever anybody wants to give us to help us get by. But anyway, so I mentioned a little bit about what happened at the Houghton Mansion, and I talked about it last week. And, of course, I wrote a blog about it on WBSM.com, which I will be updating this week, now that I feel like it's okay to kind of have the ghost conversation beyond this week's tragedy. But I do want to talk to you about your experiences at the Houghton Mansion, because you were there on Friday night when we were taking the VIP tour, so to speak, and we had that disembodied voice in John Witter's room. And I've heard you talk about this now, but for the listeners, I mean, share with them about how profound of an experience that was for you.
On that Friday night when Josh brought us into the mansion, we got a chance to roam around pretty much through the entire building. And what ended up being the last place that we were brought to was what they call Witter's room, up on the third floor in the back part of the mansion. And while sitting in there, we had, probably 7-8 people with us, maybe even less.
Yeah, about that.
Yeah. And I was standing in the back corner close to one of these little half-wall closet doors. And as Josh was talking about a particular incident or story, he pretty much summed it up. And all of us sitting there in the dark all heard this disembodied voice. I heard it basically to my left and slightly behind me, about 2 or 3 feet. And I'll try and approximate it for you. You tell me if this sounds close enough to you.
Right. That might have been a little bit longer than it was,
but yeah, it roughly about that volume, maybe a little less, but it was definitely a voice. It was trying to say something, and there was something between it and us, and it was definitely within the room, within the sphere of the room. And I was the first one to actually make comment on it, because the rest of you guys thought it was me, or at least the girls did to my right. You were directly in front of me. Where did you hear it coming from?
It sounded like it was coming from the closet to me.
Yeah. Okay, so it would have been to your right and my left, because I was facing you, you were facing me, basically.
And no offense to Josh and the great investigators at Berkshire Paranormal Group, but we wouldn't have been doing our jobs if we didn't open up the closet and look for any kind of recording device or speaker or anything, and there was nothing in there. And everybody in that room that left, nobody didn't hear it.
Yeah, we all stuck our heads in the closet, dude, like, yeah, this is where it came from.
Everybody said, I definitely heard something. And it's been great for me to go back and read. Some people have been putting up on Facebook some of their experiences, and going back and reading them and realizing, like, yes, they had the same experiences we had. I mean, this stuff legitimately
other
happened.
people from from being in the mansion have said the same thing?
No, I mean the people that were with us
Oh.
at that time, to know that there's no mistaking what we heard when we heard it.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure that we'll find other reports from other groups, too, of similar things.
I mean, people can make assumptions of what they thought we heard. It could have been somebody from outside. It could have been, the house doing something weird and settling, or other people in another room, and it's, sound bouncing. One of the other ones that I really liked was, somebody's stomach rumbling. Yeah, okay, if somebody's stomach was rumbling like that, they should see a doctor.
Right. This was definitely conversation.
Yeah.
And speaking of conversation, when we were downstairs and I heard the voices coming from up the staircase, and I brought everybody over, and they heard the same kind of thing.
Yeah, that was kind of creepy.
And I got to say, that's the second time that's happened to me in 2 different locations.
I love the response that you got. That was classic.
Anybody up there? No. Okay. But that's the second time that's happened in a different location. It happened to me in the Fearing Tavern as well. And I think that's something investigators should kind of keep an ear toward when you are in a place. If everybody's kind of on one floor, listen in, because conversation takes place other places. They're talking about you, on the second and third floors of a location while you're on the first. Now, what happened? You were on the third floor throughout. Well, first of all, I got to ask you about this. You were taking the reins of getting everybody in and out of the psychomantium.
That was a very, very eye-opening experience for me, because a lot of the people that went in there were not the same people when they came back out.
Mm-hmm.
There were some people that had, I'll just call it, very profound personal experiences, and they were not ready for the things that they saw. Several people were not prepared for the people that showed up in the mirror.
Right.
And, several others had other types of experiences that were very uplifting. So some were very somber, and a few just had nothing. More people had a reaction, either good or bad, than had, shall we say, neutral or nothing experience.
Right. I didn't talk to anybody that came out and said nothing happened. Everybody was kind of like, well, I'm not really sure. A lot of people said that, but most people, it was very profound, including Dave Schrader, who, when he came out of it, he was in tears because he made a very personal connection, as did a few of our friends. Were there a lot of people that were going in there and saying, well, I'm just going in there just to try it?
Yeah, just to try it, and then they came back out. First girl came out almost in tears. Had several other people that were very emotionally shaken. Only had one person that, pulled the panic that I had to pull out. Some people didn't realize how, if they were really, really claustrophobic, and that
Right.
was a very small, if you were claustrophobic in any manner, this was not the room for you. So, they did very, very well on the whole. Just like I said, one person had a little let me out of here type of thing.
And it wasn't like it was a situation where they're coming out and saying, I think I might have seen the face of this person.
They were very
and
definitive in there.
Not only were they definitive, but they were events of significant duration, too. It wasn't just I glanced over and out of the corner of my eye, I saw my deceased cousin, for example, and nobody told me that. I'm just using that as an example. So it wasn't that you just glance out of the corner of your eye and see that. It's that you are looking at them, and they are acknowledging you, and you are having an experience with them, with whether it be the spirit of that person or maybe just the memory of that person coming forward. Now, I'm sure that you've done a lot of research into these things before, especially any type of scrying or mirror gazing in general, but is it a legitimate means of communication with a spirit, or is it just our own memories and our own desire of who we want to see in that mirror?
Well, the form of scrying has been around thousands and thousands and thousands of years, so it's probably one of the oldest forms of divination there is. So whether it's looking into a pool of water, or in a mirror or a reflective metal surface, or what have you, your eyes are going to see what your mind is going to project there.
So you feel that it is what your mind is projecting more than it is something coming through?
I think it's a focal point for something in your mind. Now, if people have abilities such as they claim to have, and it's being filtered through their brain in some way, then yeah, it makes sense to me in terms of science that this is how your brain would react to you're using a focal point, and we're visual creatures, and this is how this chooses to manifest, whether it be something psychologically driven or something that we don't yet understand driven. Make sense?
Oh, it does. Now, what about what else was going up on the third floor? Going on up on the third floor? Excuse me. I know a lot of people were coming downstairs and saying that it was very active that night.
Oh yeah, there were shadow type people walking in front of windows. I saw a luminous. It was more football shaped than anything else. Manifest right in front of me, and then stay there for at least a minute and a half, and then just slowly fade out. There's several other people that were there watching it with me. Andy was watching a person walk back and forth in front of the windows in the third floor.
That it was happening to us in the in behind the Mason Hall.
No, we're talking. This was a human form that definitely blocked out the window. And
we had this. Not only were they doing the same thing with the window on that floor, they were standing right in front of us. They were walking by us. They were standing in our immediate personal space.
Okay, now I'm going to get to my own little personal story of what happened to me sitting in the chair. Andy was in the hallway just outside of the room I was in, and I'm sitting in one of those chairs that, Naugahyde or whatever it is, faux plastic, leather, whatever, and I'm sitting there and I could hear footsteps, and then I could feel and hear a hand running across the leather of the chair, on the chair back behind me. And I thought it was just Andy walking by, putting his hand out so he didn't trip over something.
Yeah, kind of bracing himself.
Right, because we're in pretty much pitch black. And I turned to look where Andy should have appeared on the other side of the chair, and it was just a dark nothingness that was there that then all of a sudden when I went, whoa, faded out to the ambient light in the room.
Wow.
And that's when Andy came around the corner and was like, yeah, so I had my own little, what I'll call a close encounter in that room.
Now, and I shared, last week on the show, I shared some of my experiences, including just the amazing experience I had of literally shaking hands with a ghost. And while we were doing the program here tonight, one of the investigators who was there sent me audio, 8 audio clips of different things that were going on during that time. So what I'll do is I'll go over those, and well, actually, you and I will listen to them right as soon as the show's over, and then we'll maybe bring them on to next week's show for people to hear. But it's one of those things where even if there is no quantifiable, quote-unquote, evidence to back up what happened, I know that it happened, and the people who were there with me know that it happened, and that's enough for me.
Everybody had some form of experience in there.
It's amazing how much, and we always say, when we go to these things, gee, we hope the location plays along tonight. The Houghton Mansion was more than happy to do that. And I'll ask you this, because I've had this conversation with a few of the people who were there. I can't really get it out of my mind. Until all this stuff happened last Monday and everything that's happened before that, which kind of took over my thoughts. But from the time that we left, though, I if I closed my eyes, that's what I thought about. That's where I pictured myself, and I can't wait to get back there.
It was definitely an eye-opening experience. I'm using that term. I've been there before and had experiences there before, so to me it wasn't as new as it was to you, because that was your first time in the place. So I had that chair spin around in front of me, and I've had encounters in the basement, which Jeff actually wound up having. But I also did it also reinforced for me how careful I have to be when I'm dealing with this stuff, because I inadvertently volunteered somebody into something, which I'm used to investigating with other people that have no problem with personal experiences and
Right.
dealing with ghosts. There was a case when I was up on the 3rd floor with one of the groups, and I said, feel free to knock on the windows and open the door, or this or that. I made a blanket statement, or if you want, feel free to come up and touch any one of us. That was a mistake. I spoke about personal contact without getting permission from everybody that was there, and one poor girl got basically jumped into by a couple of, what she says, a couple of spirits that were trying very, very adamantly to get a message out. She is not necessarily like a regular psychic or medium. She says she's had, things happen before in terms of visions and stuff like that, but she calls herself like a closet psychic. She knows she has some sort of ability, but she says she's never had something like this happen, and she was unprepared for it.
And you're speaking of the woman who was there with the older gentleman?
Yeah, with the lawyer.
She was very, very shaken by it afterwards.
She definitely was in a panic mode, and I went into EMT mode trying to basically help her out, and she was very, very visibly shaken. And I felt responsible for that because I volunteered her, in a sense, without getting the permission. And you got to realize that's a responsibility that we all got to take here.
And I'll say that about the Houghton Mansion. It definitely, not that we weren't already consciously aware of the fact that these people are kind of in our care during these events, and we make everybody sign a waiver so if anything happens it doesn't come back on us, but still, we want to make sure that they're safe and that they're protected, and it raised up a lot of flags that, we're putting them in a situation where we can't guarantee that. And, the things that we take for granted and that we want to have happen to us isn't the experience that everybody's signing up for.
Right. We had one person that was in one of the groups that got a reaction that she was, fully aware could happen. She was accosted as well. But she did so fully knowing. There's a difference. So she's a seasoned investigator. She knows that these things happen. This poor girl was, she was Pearl Harbored.
So definitely, I can't wait to get back there. I don't know when we're going to have our next Legend Trips event there. We are working on a bunch of really cool stuff, and if you sign up for the mailing list on legendtrips.com, you'll get first crack at tickets to when we do have our next events. And I can tell you that Edaville is out of the picture, but maybe in the future they're doing some construction there. I can't really reveal everything that's going on, but it's going to be a much cooler park when all that stuff is done. We're working on a return to Fort Tabor.
Excellent. And
don't really want to let the cat out of the bag too much, but USS Salem.
I was going to say, is there something nautical involved?
Yes. So we're just nailing everything down with that. It looks like, I think we have a date, but Jeff's been out of town, so I haven't followed up with him because he was setting that one up. And we're working on a few other things. I've actually, again, not to give anything away, but I've made an initial contact with your friend Tim. So we'll see where that leads.
Okay.
And so definitely go to legendtrips.com, sign up for the mailing list, because that is going to be your ticket in. You're going to get first crack at everything. Oh, and we're also definitely going to be doing another Dead of Summer event at Lizzie Borden's coming up in August as well. So
that is always...
Yeah, it's always active, and it always sells out in pre-sale, so you got to get on that list at legendtrips.com. So that about does it for this week's show. And I got to tell you, we've got some great things coming up in the coming weeks. We're going to be having on Lisa Campion, who's a psychic, but she's also an empath, and she's going to share with us about being an empath, as well as giving some readings for the listeners. She was going to join us this week, but everything kind of happened, and then at the same time she also fell ill. So we'll have her coming on sometime down the line. We're going to be having on Tyrone E. Keyes Jr., who wrote a new novel called Quantum Dawn. We're going to talk with him about the idea of alternate dimensions, and we're going to be talking about Black-Eyed Children coming up with David Weatherly.
Oh, really?
So we'll just got to finalize everything with him as well. And so again, and also tonight, if anybody follows us at Twitter at SpookySC, Amy Bruni of Ghost Hunters will be joining us in studio sometime soon. So she asked when she can come in and co-host, and I told her anytime you want. Why not?
Yeah. We're only right down the street.
Absolutely. All right, so that does it for this week's show. Again, if you want to follow along with us online throughout the course of the week, Twitter at SpookySC, myself at Tim Weisberg, and also Facebook.com/Spooky Southcoast or Facebook.com/The Other Tim Weisberg. And Matt Moniz has a public page as well that you can follow along. So those are the ways that you can keep up with us. You can also email us, spookycrew@spookysouthcoast.com. So until next week, for Matt Moniz, for Matt Costa, for Chris Balzano, I'm Tim Weisberg, and we want you all...
Rather than...
Oop, I guess I can't run that. But I was going to just run the closing theme song, but apparently the computer is not playing along. So I will stall for another minute. And then I will remind everybody, too, that we have the South Coast Toy and Comic Show coming up on May 19th, southcoasttoyandcomic.com to follow along with that, and also the Rhode Island Comic Con in November, ricomiccon.com to follow along with that.
Can I also plug something?
Real quick?
ExperiencersSpeak2.com.
All right, when's that?
That's going to be in September 8th, I believe.
All right, so definitely we'll have the twins on to talk about that too. And so until next week then, for Matt Moniz, for Matt Costa, for Chris Balzano, I am Tim Weisberg, and we do want you all to stay spooktacular.
Rest assured, listener, that my time here has not been easy, and what you have just heard was not fiction. Although, in many a desperate moment, I most certainly wish it had been.
The station on the South